like this when I look out and I see how many people showed up and how many people keep coming, and I see the fact that our community is standing up for what's right, that I'm really proud to claim the title of YA student. About a week before I started, in August of 2010, I was in Normandy, Pennsylvania, where I attended high school, and the rabbi in the community sent out an email. It said that there would be this rally in Brooklyn on behalf of Tamar. It was the first time I ever heard of ORA, the Organization for the Resolution of Agunot. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go. It was too soon before school started, and so I started school that week. And the Wednesday of that week, the first day of classes, there were signs around the school that there would be this rally taking place in Midtown for this Agunah, a name of a woman that I had never heard of. But I'd heard of ORA, and a friend of mine was planning on going, so I figured I'd go. So I went to this rally. I felt a bit uncomfortable chanting things on the streets of Manhattan. We all went back to school together. We heard a cheer from Rabbi Stern, and life went on. I recently found out that one of the primary reasons this get was given is because of that rally. Ours mentioned that there might be a second rally, and that was one of the catalysts in making sure that the get was given. I and the other students who turned out that day to support a woman I had never met before and I've never seen her since, we made a difference in her life. Since then, I attended 2 rallies in Silver Spring on behalf of Tamar, and this semester I started the Agunah Advocacy Club and got as involved as I could in the community. After I finished hanging out flyers for this panel this past Sunday night, and I was heading back to my dorm, I asked myself why this cause of so many others had gripped me. Why did ORA matter so much to me? Partly, it's because the members of ORA are some of the most incredible people I've ever met. They really dedicate their lives to the Jewish community. But there was more. After all, I just spent 2 hours working on the publicity for this panel, and I still had 2 midterms to study for, and it was already after midnight. There was something that caught me so much. And I think that what it really is that when I hear about a case of of get refusal, it angers me, because someone's taken halacha, taken that which is sacred to us, and twisted it for their own benefit. In Tamar, we're promised that the Torah, that halacha, will be what is seen as our wisdom in the eyes of the nations. But someone, a fellow Jew, a member of our community, decided that not only could he take this halacha and twist it selfishly, but he could twist it maliciously, that he could hurt someone with it. That's something that has to be intolerable to us. This panel is the final event in TAC's Domestic Violence and Abuse Awareness Week. There are 2 messages that we hope you'll all leave with today. First, that we as a community will not tolerate those who engage in get abuse. We must be aware that when someone is manipulating the divorce proceedings, and we must stand united to eradicate this problem. Further, we do have a solution to prevent further cases of Igor. Rav Mordechai Willig, a Rosh Yeshiva of YU, has developed a halachic prenuptual agreement. There is no reason why any couple getting married today does not sign it. Thank you to our panelists for joining with us tonight. I am pleased to introduce, we have with us Dr. David Pelcovitz, Rabbi Hershel Schachter, Rabbi Jeremy Stern, and Tamar Epstein. Dr. David Pelcovitz holds the Gwendolyn and Joseph Strauss Chair in Psychology and Jewish Education at Azrieli Graduate School of Jewish Education and Administration at YU. He is also a special assistant to President Richard M. Joel. Dr. Pelcovitz is an instructor in pastoral counseling at the Rabbi Hershel Theological Seminary. Areas of Dr. Pelcovitz's specialty include family violence, the impact of domestic violence, and stress management. Rabbi Hershel Schachter is a noted Talmudic scholar, has had a distinguished career at the Rabbi Hershel Theological Seminary for more than 40 years. He joined the faculty in 1967 at the age of 26, the youngest Rosh Yeshiva at Greece. Since 1971, Rosh Schachter has been the Rosh Kollel in the Marcos Medina Katz Kollel, and also holds the Nathan and Vivian Fink Distinguished Professorial Chair in Talmud. We are especially grateful to Rosh Schachter for agreeing to speak with us on such short notice. Unfortunately, due to the late change in plans, Rosh Schachter will have to leave a little bit early, and we thank him for the time he was able to join us. Rabbi Jeremy Stern serves as the Executive Director of the Organization for the Resolution of Agunot. Over. Rabbi Stern received his bachelor's degree, master's in Jewish education, and rabbinic ordination from Yeshiva University, and he is now studying towards an MPA in nonprofit administration. With ORA, Rabbi Stern has been instrumental in resolving dozens of Agunot cases and in leading community-wide initiatives to assist women who are the victims of get refusal. Rabbi Stern lectures frequently on issues of domestic abuse, Agunot, and the halachic prenuptual agreement. Many of you, if not all, have heard of Tamar Epstein before. Tamar is a nurse practitioner who lives in Philadelphia with her daughter. She's also an Agunot. While I know Tamar and the Epstein family from high school, Mrs. Epstein was my teacher in AP U.S. History and Holocaust Studies, ORA has also initiated a very public campaign to pressure Tamar's ex-husband, Aaron Friedman, to give her the get that she has been waiting for. Tamar and Aaron were married in April 2006. They have been separated since March 2008 and civilly divorced since April 2010. Aaron was the plaintiff in all divorce matters pertaining to child custody and visitation. A SERU, an order of contempt by Beis Din, has been in effect against Aaron since September 2011. Without further ado, Dr. Pelcovitz.
I'm so moved by the turnout tonight. It says something very wonderful about the wonderful work being done by the organizers of this conference. I was asked to speak for about 10 minutes, talking about this issue from a psychological perspective. I'll start with the words of my Rebbe, Rav Palm, who I was privileged to learn with, being his shir for 4 or 5 years. When he used to talk about abuse, he would talk about a duality. He would say, when you see somebody who's being faced with abusive behavior and you look the other way, among the many doraisas that you are really being over, you just look the other way, is halama. The end of the pasuk is hakem takem imo. You have to stand by them. But when you look at them and you help them and you're there to do everything you can to take them from a place of pain and silence to a place of support, among the many mitzvahs that you're makayim is the mitzvah of hashavas aveda, because you're returning to them their lost soul. I'm just going to speak for a few minutes about a study done here by a group of you, of undergraduates. Some of them are here. My daughter, Michal Pelcovitz, Sefi Lerner-Hefter, and a number of others who interviewed a number of Agunot using a structured interview designed to capture the subtle and not so subtle psychological impact of what happens. And it was done with the support of ORA. It couldn't have been done without ORA. And I just want to share with you a little bit about what you're turning away from when you're not there to be Mekayim, the Hakem Takem Ima. We found that about 75% of the women who were interviewed had a loss of a sense of meaning. It got to their basic sense of purpose in their life. This all comes under the category of normal reaction to abnormal events. About 1 in 5 hit such a level of despair that they started to contemplate actually self-harm. Not all, but about 1 in 5, which makes you just realize what an incredibly stressful situation it is and how important it is for us to stand at their side. 85% talked about compromised trust in our community, and I could go on with this. But I wanted to talk just for a few minutes about some of the even more invisible victims, what our study found with the children. Because the children were incredibly impacted. It shouldn't be surprising to us. There was significant impairment in their ability to learn. There was significant impairment in their sense of trust and protection, in their social functioning, in their emotional functioning. And you already saw sometimes the impact going into the next generation. sometimes children living in this kind of situation, it starts to impact on their basic view of the world. And the eye sees only what the mind knows. What that study showed me, and I think is in many ways not surprising, is that often the pain is invisible. But that heightens our responsibility. I had a colleague who I've done some writing with who once showed me, he's an expert in trauma. He once showed me the picture of an fMRI, the picture of a brain of one of his patients at the moment that he was having a flashback to the worst moment of his life. He was stuck in the stairwell of the World Trade Center on 9/11, and he was treating him. As part of trying to understand what was happening to him, he was actually able to take a picture of what does the brain look like when it's having a flashback to the most horrifying moment of its life. And it was an amazing thing to see, because when you look at it, what you saw was demimus. You saw what's meant by Vayido Mara. Brokaw's area was shut down. The language centers of the brain were shut down. Then, what my colleague Dr. Vanderkolk was able to show, that as he gave his patient words for his pain, as he lit up the language centers of his brain by giving him meaning and giving him support, that's where the refuah came. And in fact, our Rabbi Harlap's grandfather, Rabbi Harlap, in his Haggadah, Mein Moron, he says the following. He says, Avdos, slavery, takes away our koach hadibur. And when a week from tomorrow night, we sit around the Seder, as a family, as a people, as a community, and we talk about our freedom and the meaning of our delivery from slavery, as we collectively light up the language centers of our people, he says that's Magid, and Magid is the essence of what Pesach is about. What tonight's about, and the talks you're about to hear, is about naming the monster. It's about the power of standing next to other people who are going through incredibly unjust treatment in a way that we give them words for their pain, show them support, and perhaps most importantly, hopefully, we'll be able, for all of us collectively, to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Hashem Sameinu. Thank you.
Why you shouldn't be able to pick up this now. So that document everybody agrees to. That prenuptual agreement, no machlekes, everyone agrees, and you can fill that out, there's no problem. The second prenuptual agreement, though only the majority of the poskim agree, does not pose a problem, but there's a teeny minority who don't accept it. The Rabbanim in Yeshiva, the overwhelming majority of the Rabbanim in Yeshiva do accept the second document as well. So the second document says as follows: in the event that the bezin of our choice will determine that the husband is acting improperly by not giving his wife a gift, and the husband is already stating now, before he gets married, that he's obligated himself to pay his wife a certain amount from the Zionist and support of his wife. The husband is obligated to support his wife. To what extent is the husband obligated to support his wife? So the Gemara says that his family is a very wealthy family. His parents were very wealthy. And they always went there to Israel for all the shows for God. And then for the summertime they go to to Mexico, to New Zealand, whatever. They're always traveling around the world. And they have maids at home. And they have someone else do the shopping for them. And the boy's mother never lifted a finger to do work in the house. And the boy can afford it. So he's out, even though the girl is very poor, she comes from the poor family. But the din is koila hilo. The husband is obligated to support his wife the same way his father supported his mother. And if the boy came from a poor family, or if the boy's family never spent so much, spent so much on their vacations and so on, the girl's family always lived that style of living, and the husband can afford it. So the husband is obligated to support his wife the same way his in-laws lived. That's Allah and the Gemara. You have to take the higher style of living of the two families. So how much support is the husband willing to give his wife? Well, it depends about the two families. So if the husband will write in the document that if the Bezdin of our choice that we chose the other document, that Bezdin will determine that I'm acting improperly by not giving you a get. And then he'll write, I hereby myself to give you $1 million for every week that I don't give you the get from the time that the Bezdin determines that I'm acting improperly. So that's already a guzman, that's an exaggeration. So the husband right now is lovey-dovey with the wife. They're not even married yet. So he thinks that it's never going to happen. They love each other. He thinks this will never come to fruition. That will have to be obligated to give them $1 million penalty. So this is what the Gemara considers asmachta. This is a guzman. Because it's an exaggeration, so the halach would be asmachta lokanya, even if the doesn't determine that he's acting improperly. By not giving the get, he wouldn't have to give the $1 million. So the Rabbanim should insist the husband should not write an exaggerated amount of money. He should write a reasonable amount of money, but a reasonable amount that will hurt him, that will be significant. So let's say if the husband will write in the event that the doesn't will determine I'm acting improperly, so from that time on, I obligate myself now to give you support to the tune of $1,000 a week. That'll give $15,000 a year. It's not so unreasonable. A lot of people need $15,000 a year to live on their own. Or the wealthy people even write $2,000 a year. $2,000 a week. So that's what the overwhelming majority of the posting or of the opinion that this will not constitute an asmachta. And this is a valid agreement and will be binding in court. Just within the past month, I think, there was a case of a woman who wanted to get from her husband for the longest time. And the husband had a lawyer who was acting highly improperly. So the couple had filled out a prenuptial agreement in advance. And the husband already forgot that he filled out the prenuptial agreement, wasn't feeling well by the time they were getting divorced. So the lawyer argued out in court, in secular court, that the prenuptial agreement was a forgery. That the rabbi, the notary public, everybody forged the whole document. The whole thing was sheker l'chazan. So finally the judge in court had to determine that the prenuptial agreement was not a forgery, and it was binding. So then they finally went to the Bezdin that they had chosen before they got married. The Bezdin said the husband was acting improperly, should have given his wife a get a long time ago, a year ago, whatever it was. And then they had a choice of either giving the get within 45 days or paying her thousands and thousands of dollars. And he finally decided to give her the get. So the woman, the Agunah situation was solved because of this prenuptial agreement. Usually what happens is that if you have a prenuptial agreement, the husband will not start up with the wife. He knows that he stands to lose, and this will be upheld in court. This is a regular legal document. This will be upheld in a secular court, not only in a religious business. So it's recommended that every couple should fill out such a prenuptial agreement. A friend of ours, our friends their daughter got engaged, and the yeshiva boy didn't. He said he doesn't want to sign that prenuptial agreement. They kept on pressuring him, why not? He didn't want to give a reason. And they broke off the shidduch. What is he afraid of? What does he stand to lose over here? Why can't he agree to support his wife to the tune of $2,000 a week if the best will determine that he's acting improperly. So they broke off the shidduch over this, and I think they were right. The fellow must have been in character. Rabbi Hershel was supposed to come tonight, just was like he was the one who worked out this prenuptual agreement. He was supposed to present this, but he wasn't able to show up, so that's why I presented. I just want to add on a little bit more, just a few words about some of the work that Order does. We have to ascertain the facts of the case. There are always two versions, two sides to the story, sometimes more than two sides to the story. So the people from Order have an obligation to work very conscientiously to make sure that the woman's version of the story is either fully accurate or sufficiently accurate that it should deserve to embarrass the husband. So when you make a big demonstration in front of the husband's home or in front of the husband's office, you're humiliating the husband. So do you have a right to humiliate someone? Do you have a right to distribute leaflets to say that the person is ma'agin his wife? This is outright lashon hara. It's true. If it wouldn't be true, it would be Hotzah Shema. But if it's true, it's still an Isser lashon hara. So the Gemara tells us that this prohibition of Agunot to annoy someone, to irritate someone, and lashon hara doesn't apply when the person is doing something wrong. He's doing an avera, and you're humiliating him in this area of the avera that he's doing. We had a couple who lived here in the neighborhood, in the building next to mine, 44 bedded. The husband refused to give his wife a get. So everybody was talking themselves blue, nothing helped. So the people from Order spoke to the husband, spoke themselves blue, they didn't get anywhere. So they asked me, would I write a letter, an open letter to the people in the shul where he davened, that they will not allow him to daven in the shul anymore, they will not allow him to get any on this until he gives his wife a get. He's acting improperly, they weren't living together anyway. So he must give his wife a get. So when they showed the letter, when the Gabbai in the shul showed the letter to the husband, that week the get was taken care of. They didn't need any demonstrations, they didn't need any embarrassment or humiliation for anything. So sometimes he can solve the problem just by threatening to expose the improper action or activities of the husband. And if that's not sufficient to threat alone, then the halacha says that you're permitted to humiliate the husband, to embarrass him. This is called the halachic of the Rabbi Tam. The Tam is the one who said that even if there are cases where you have the bezin has the right to force the husband to give a get, that means to beat him up, to physically beat him up, bludgeon him to either die or to give the wife a get. Either should become an alman or should become a grusha, one or the other. So sometimes we don't always allow the bezin to bludgeon a person, to beat him up until he agrees to give the get. But to embarrass him in public if he's doing wrong, and of course this has to be checked out many times in order to make sure that the facts are correct. So then we do have the right to embarrass the person. Chacham Abadi Yosef has a tshuva where he writes that he followed this practice on several occasions. When the husband refused to give the get, they organized such a campaign, such a halachic to Rabbi Tamar was successful. I want to commend the group of workers, especially Rabbi Stern, for their hard work. And he got me on a week that I'm very depressed. I was talking to Dr. Pelcovitz, I need a little help. I was working in the little work that I do doesn't compare to the work that Rabbi Stern does, the other group does. Just this week, I had 3 different cases that they threw at me, and all of the 3 cases were very, very sick. So it's very depressing, and whatever you young people can do to help solve the problem by participating in a demonstration and so on is really a tremendous mitzvah. And the people in Order have to make sure that they check over the facts many times over to make sure that they're not embarrassing a person improperly, and that we have the right to organize such campaigns. Thank you very much. I have to apologize. Pesach is Dr. Belton's yahrzeit. So I was asked to speak across the street. I wanted to come a little early in order to greet the guests who were coming. So I apologize, I have to leave, but I think the panel is very important. I think whoever can should really stay to the end to hear the full discussion.
I'd first like to thank Kubi United and the other members of the Agunah Advocacy Club who've done a tremendous job organizing this event, and the prenup blitz that we just had in handing out folders to every single dorm room door, under every dorm room door in Westminster. They've done a tremendous job. It's really an honor for me to speak an event with Rabbi Hershel Schachter and with Dr. Pelcovitz. And it's an unfortunate privilege that I have to fight with Tamar, with her and on her behalf for her get. Thank you, Tamar, for having the courage to be with us here tonight. Thank you. Just want to give a little bit of background about ORA and also talk about the prenup and our experience at ORA with the prenup. ORA was founded in 2002 by a group, as Dr. Pelcovitz said, a group of YU undergraduate students. They heard about an Agunah case from one of the Rosh Yeshiva here, and they asked what they can do. They were told, organize a protest rally, see if that helps. And it did. It resolved the case. And they started working on a few other cases, literally out of the YU dorm. Over the past 10 years, we've grown into a full non-profit organization, and we're now working at this point on about 70 Agunah cases, open Agunah cases throughout the world, basically in every major Jewish community that you can think of. Unfortunately, no community is immune to this problem. So that's the bad news. The good news is we have assisted in the resolution of 172 Agunah cases in the past 10 years. ORA's approach combines facilitation with advocacy. Whenever we take on a case, we always try to resolve it amicably at first by, as Rabbi Schachter mentioned, looking deep into the facts of the case, trying to triangulate the evidence, make sure that we're not just hearing from one side, but from many different points of view, and to look at the facts and the paper trail of the case. We always try to resolve things amicably at first by opening lines of communication between the two sides, by trying to facilitate debates in process, to do whatever we can to avoid a confrontation and to work with both parties. And or we say that we don't represent either party. We represent the get. Our concern is that once a marriage is irreconcilable, a get will be issued unconditionally and in a timely fashion. But in situations where, and many cases are resolved through this facilitation, this amicable approach. But if it comes to a situation where we've exhausted all possibility of resolving it amicably, then we will use all halachically acceptable and civilly legal forms of pressure that are available to us. And we'll talk about some of the pressure that we've used in Tamar's case. When it comes to any halachic issues, we do consult with Rabbi Schachter, who's our co-staker. I want to talk a little bit about the prenup and why it's so important. The prenup, the halachic prenuptial agreement, has been 100% effective in assuring that a get is given in a timely fashion. We look at our cases at ORA, and we go through the list. We've done this in our office, and we see just case after case after case that could have been prevented had a prenup been signed. Signing a prenup is not for you, per se. Whenever a couple comes to our office and we help them with the prenup, just to notarize it and things like that, I say that the people coming to our office are very excited to sign the prenup, and I never anticipate that they will lead it themselves. They're signing it, and everyone here has to sign it, not necessarily for yourself, but for someone else. Someone else who might not be in this room tonight and hasn't heard this message, because we need the signing of the halachic prenuptial agreement to become a communal standard, that everyone does it within our community, so that we can effectively eradicate this problem from our community. It's like a vaccine. If everyone takes the vaccine, the disease can go away, because everyone has been immunized from the problem. That's what the prenup does. It's so effective. We need to make it a communal standard that everyone does. This is the prenup that my wife and I signed before we got married. And when I signed it, I actually thought it was kind of romantic, right? Some people say, what do you mean it's romantic? You're talking about divorce at the time of marriage. I first remind them, that's what the Ksuba says. The Ksuba talks about divorce at the time of marriage. But putting that aside, if the Ksuba, I was saying to someone, if the Ksuba was written in Aramaic and we had fancy writing around it and designs, everyone would sign, the prenup was written in Aramaic and we had fancy, pictures around it, everyone would sign it. The problem is written in legalese, and it's a very imposing document, but it's not so scary. It's a very good thing. So when I signed it, what I was saying to my wife is that I love you so much, I care about you so much, that I never want to hurt you. Divorce brings out the worst in people. The way Rav Willig describes it is signing the prenup is protecting yourself from yourself. People do things in a divorce situation that they otherwise would never do. And it's hard, very hard to anticipate when getting married. And when getting married, and as Rav Schachter said, when you're lovey-dovey, to anticipate what someone will be like in the most difficult of times in a divorce situation. But it's protecting yourself from yourself. And if someone refuses to sign a halachic prenuptial agreement, that's a red flag. If someone won't sign it, don't marry them. I'm serious, don't marry them. Everyone must be able to say that I love you so much and I care about you so much that I never want to hurt you. That's what you're saying by signing the prenup, and you're not raising any concerns about the marriage, you're just doing it as a communal standard. The story I'd like to share, this is a true story, and it sends shivers down my spine when I think about it, but it really stresses the importance of what we're doing here tonight. This isn't the first time that there's been a panel here in YU on Agunot and prenuptial agreements. 10 years ago, shortly after Ora was founded in 2002, there was a panel, I believe, here in this room, in Weisberg Commons, with 4 panelists: Rav Schachter, Joshua Ross, who was the founding director of ORA and my predecessor, Rabbi Yonah Rees, who at the time was the director of the Beit of America, and Michelle Greenberg-Cobrin. At the time, Michelle was practicing law, and she wrote the definitive article demonstrating that the halachic prenuptial agreement is binding in civil court, and indeed, there's case law out there which the prenup has stood up in civil court. And Michelle had the following message to share with everyone who was in the room 10 years ago. Michelle said that if every YU student and Stern student would sign the prenup, we can eradicate this problem from our community. And this is on YU Torah, you can listen to it. I think the shir is called the Agunah Convention, it's in 2002. And Michelle said that go out and tell your friends that everyone must sign the prenup. Tragically, 2 women who were at Stern College at the time, to no fault of their own, they didn't hear about the event, and none of their friends told them to sign the prenup, and they ended up needing it. One was a girl who I went to high school with, who waited over 3 years for her get. The other was Tamar. And Tamar's waited over 4 years at this point for her get. None of her friends went from the panel 10 years ago to say, Tamar, you have to sign a prenup. She didn't know about it. Friends don't, this is the phrase we want to get out there. Friends don't let friends get married without a prenup. Okay? Friends don't let friends get married without a prenup. If a friend says to you, I want you to be a bridesmaid at my wedding or a groomsman at my wedding, you say, I'd love to. You're a dear friend, as long as you sign a prenup. And when you have family members who are getting married, you say you better sign a prenup. As a family member, I love and care about you, you better sign a prenup. And this event is being live streamed to the parents who are listening to this. You tell your children, we won't pay for the wedding and we won't show up unless a prenuptial agreement is signed. We're really serious about this because this is a real problem within our community, and there's no reason why every single person in this room and everyone who, our entire community, should not sign the halachic prenuptial agreement. Because we cannot have more Tamar Epsteins in our community. This problem can be prevented. In 10 years from now, I hope that Ora will have no more cases. We'll go out of business due to a lack of business. But the problem is, the worst, my nightmare, is that if we look back and wish that someone in this room tonight would have said something to someone else. Someone in this room tonight would have said something to a certain student who is not in the room tonight, or another YU guy who's not in the room tonight. We have an obligation to act. Every person here must serve as an emissary to their community to make the prenup a standard within our community. It's in our hands to eradicate the problem of Agunot from the community. Thank you.
It's an honor for me to participate in this panel tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity to give back in some small way to ORA, which is an organization that immensely indebted to. I have fond memories of my years at Stern College and a great appreciation for the education that I received here. But over the past couple of years, I've developed a deeper sense of pride in my status as a Yeshiva University alumna, as I've witnessed and personally benefited from the courage, innovation, and sensitivity of the Rosh Yeshiva and administrative leadership of this institution in tackling the problem of the modern day Agunah. This week marks 4 years since I separated from my ex-husband, and next month will be the 2-year anniversary of my civil divorce. But I continue to wait for a get, and so I've earned the unenviable status of Agunah. In fact, in a recent New York Times article, I was referred to as the country's most famous Agunah. I realize that my case has earned a higher level of publicity, in large part because my ex-husband, Aaron Friedman, has a high-level position as a tax counsel to the Ways and Means Committee of the United States House of Representatives. But I'm acutely aware of the hundreds of other women who, like myself, are struggling for a get, but who, unlike myself, have little to no support. And so I speak to you tonight on behalf of those anonymous Agunot, because I can relate to the pain of being trapped, but I can't begin to fathom the burden and fear of confronting a ma'agim while isolated and alone. The first 23 years of my life were as close to perfect as anyone could have wished for. I was born into a loving and warm home. My parents were exceptionally nurturing and supportive. I had close friends and family, and wonderful educational opportunities. And then I got married. A week after Shabbat Brachos, I knew that I had made a terrible mistake. But I suppressed those intuitions because in my mind, there was no alternative. I lived with my then husband for just under 2 years and spent that time actively working on trying to improve the marriage. We had a child, and the problems in the marriage got worse after I became pregnant, and even worse after I gave birth. And so it was when my daughter was merely 4 months old that I made the most difficult decision of my life, which was to leave my husband and ask for a divorce. I did it with a heavy conscience and a broken heart. I've never regretted that decision. In fact, I'm grateful that I had the courage to do what seemed almost impossible at the time. And I'm certain that I made the right decision for myself and for my daughter. I was then propelled into a highly contentious divorce that has involved multiple attempts at mediation, 3 different batei din, about 5 court hearings in front of half a dozen judges. But the part that has been most shocking and painful has been Aaron Friedman's refusal to give me a get. Divorce is always painful, but the healing process cannot begin until the parties have completely disentangled themselves one from the other and begin to move on with his or her own life. And that's exactly what the Agunah can't do. And so she's kept trapped in this initial state of divorce, which is wrought with anger, resentment, pain, and mistrust. And it's most detrimental for the children if there are children involved. Children of divorced parents or divorcing parents are most affected by the trauma of the initial separation. But once the parents themselves begin to settle down and move on, the children similarly do better. But in a situation where there's gap refusal, the children are also kept stuck in a high level of conflict where cooperative co-parenting is almost impossible. Who is the gap refuser? Rabbi Dr. Abraham Tversky posits in his book, Shame Born in Silence, that a gap refusal is an act of abuse, of domestic abuse. And it is often that climactic act of abuse in that particular relationship. But the message that I want to leave with you tonight is that a gap refuser is not born overnight or in a vacuum. I believe that a gap refuser develops in large part in response to the messages that are both explicitly and implicitly conveyed to him by his community. We are people of compassion and smiut, and it's natural for us to feel uncomfortable in inserting ourselves into a conflict that appears to be private and personal between a divorcing husband and wife. And so all too often we find ourselves saying, there must be two sides to this story. I'm sure if we shower him with kindness and validate his feelings, he'll come around and maybe then he'll give again. Or I'm concerned that if we put too much pressure on him, he'll become too angry and distanced, and then he'll never give again. I understand why people react in this way, but my experience has taught me that this is the wrong approach, and it results in the Orthodox community being too soft on gap refusal. We do not need to judge the individuals involved. Who are we to judge? But we must judge the behavior. Gap refusal is a corruption of halacha and punishes those who are adherent to Torah. It is never acceptable. It should never be considered acceptable to either withhold the issuance or acceptance of a gap for any period of time. Our communal standard must be that a gap must be given immediately and unconditionally when a marriage is dissolved. Aaron Friedman did not become a notorious gap refuser overnight. For the first 2 years after our separation, there was essentially no pressure on him to give a gap. He asserted that he was justified in withholding a gap because he was unsatisfied with the terms of the visitation arrangement that had been adjudicated in court. And his family, friends, and Rabbanim did not challenge that assertion. I, like so many women, were fearful to antagonize him, and I thought it most prudent to approach the situation quietly, gingerly, and non-confrontationally, and above all, with patience. After 2 years of separation with all matters resolved, either in court or mediation, and my civil divorce pending, I asked a Rav who had developed a relationship with Aaron to approach him and beg him for a gap from me. I did this because my father, Alav Shalom, who had been diagnosed with a terminal illness just months before, was dying. Although my father had accepted that he would never see me happily remarried, he was desperate to see me free. I was told that Aaron responded with such anger and cruelty to this request that it became clear to me that my quiet and gentle approach was not working. I had to try something different. And that's when I approached Ora. Ora agreed to get involved. And after attempting negotiation and mediation for an extended period of time to try to resolve the case in a discreet manner, Ora, like so many before and after, made no headway and concluded that they needed more public tactics. I do not know where I would be today without the commitment and expertise of Ora. Ora helped garner for me rabbinic and public support that I needed so that I have not remained just another anonymous Agunah. And progress is being made every day. Not only has my case received a lot of publicity, but there has also been an outpouring of support from all parts of the Jewish community. I feel tremendously indebted to each and every person who has participated in a live or virtual rally, signed petitions, been on Facebook, and have kept me in their prayers. I want to say a special thank you to the many Rabbanim and Roshei Yeshiva in Philadelphia, New York, Silver Spring, and Washington, D.C., who have guided and supported me throughout this process. The Agunah is amongst the most vulnerable person and people in our community. We as a community have a responsibility to protect her and ensure her release. And we as a community can work towards that goal if we, ourselves, our institutions, and our leadership accept a zero-tolerance policy on get refusal. And in the merit of that commitment, may God look favorably upon us and send us a salvation to all those in need. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Schachter, Dr. Pelcovitz, Rabbi Stern, and Tamar. I'm incredibly moved. I'm going to ask a few questions that I thought of to the various panelists, and we'll open up the floor for questions from you. So my first question is, Rabbi Stern, like Tamar mentioned, we all know Tamar's case is this big, high-profile case. Do you want to tell us more about it? Okay. There's a mic over there.
Great. I figured I'd be asked about this. So I've prepared a few remarks. To talk about Tamar's case, I think we need to, hear me fine? I think we need to broaden the picture and understand, as Tamar mentioned, that one of the issues here is community members not understanding that domestic abuse is never acceptable. Am I trying to move the mic over? Keep it as is? That domestic abuse is never acceptable. Domestic abuse, as Dr. Pelcovitz discussed, and as Tamar mentioned, is about control. Abuse is not just about black and blue marks, but controlling someone's life, their future, their freedoms. And just like we cannot tolerate physical abuse, so too we cannot tolerate emotional and psychological abuse. And it's sad how many people have come up in Tamar's case and said, well, it's justified for this reason or that reason. And I'll get into some of the specifics of the case. Get refusal is never justified. The get is the last vestige of control that a abusive individual has over their spouse. I believe that this case will be resolved once Aaron understands that nothing will be gained by withholding the get. Once he understands that the get may not be used as leverage. People have pressed Tamar to negotiate, as if negotiations haven't been tried many, many times. Custody and visitation should be determined according to what's in the best interests of the child. And when the two parties can't come to an agreement about custody and visitation in the best interests of the child, they will turn to a third party, a beit din, a child psychologist, a civil court, to make that determination. in this case, it was Aaron who was the plaintiff in the civil divorce matter, in all civil divorce matters, which determines custody and visitation. He was the one who said, the way I want custody and visitation to be decided is in civil court. And so now, once he didn't get everything that he wanted in civil court, he then moved to modify the court decision, and some modifications were made. But even then, he's not satisfied, and he still wants more. And he still wants Tamar to negotiate. But negotiations cannot be conducted when someone holds a gun to your head or a get over your head. In the last negotiation, Aaron literally walked away from the table after an agreement had been reached and the sofer was already called and was on his way to write the get. There were 9 months of quiet afterwards, from Tamar and Aaron's last negotiation until the Seruv, the order of contempt, was issued against him and pressure was restarted. So my message to Aaron is, if you truly love your daughter, you'll stop abusing her mother. To clarify some points about the case, there's a question about Shabbos, that perhaps their daughter, or Aaron, was not able to have proper visitation due to issues of Shabbos. So first of all, Aaron was never denied access to their daughter due to his observance of Shabbos, and Tamar always made accommodations. And on top of that, in July 2011, the court order was modified so that Aaron's visitation is every other weekend, starting at Thursday at 5 p.m. until Sunday at 5 p.m. So even with amazing Tosefet Shabbos, with incredible Chumrah, there are no Shabbos issues anymore whatsoever, as if there ever were. Aaron has a third of the days of the calendar year with their daughter. People have also asked about the legality of pressuring Aaron's employer, Congressman Dave Camp, to make a statement against Aaron for refusing to issue a get. So this is legal. It's very common in politics to pressure lawmakers to take a stand on issues of concern to the Jewish community. Consider Jonathan Pollard, the Obama administration's support of Israel. There are many issues in which we press lawmakers to take a stand and make a statement on an issue that's important to the Jewish community. To be extremely clear, we are not asking Congressman Camp to fire Aaron. We are asking Congressman Camp to make a statement condemning Aaron's refusal to issue Tamar a get. Previously, his office had referred to the case as gossip. This is not gossip, this is abuse. Aaron must hear from everyone in his life, from his employer, his family, and his friends, that what he is doing is inexcusable. Aaron's cruel manipulation of halacha is a chilul Hashem. It is a kiddush Hashem when we stand up and say that we will not tolerate this abuse within our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Pelcovitz, we've heard all it's clear that there's a difference between civil divorce proceedings, between negotiation, and between what constitutes abuse. And I was wondering if you could speak a bit about what you see as the line between the two. Maybe from a more psychological perspective.
So the difference between negotiation and abuse is exactly what we just heard and so eloquently from Rabbi Stern. The second you start to use control as a way of trying to get your way, the second you close yourself off to the other perspective, it starts to become a continuation of what's emotionally abusive. It's interesting. You take a picture of a brain at the moment that it's being emotionally abused. The same part of the brain lights up when it's being physically assaulted. That's exactly what it's like. It's no different than a physical assault. Negotiation is about getting curious about what the other side is thinking. Negotiation is about perspective taking. It's about give, it's about a take. It's about not trying to get your way. It's about being an adult in terms of trying to look at how to come to some kind of a mutually agreeable exercise, compromise. The second that you cross the line into a control and into a situation where you're going to really distort what halacha is all about, as a way of trying to wring out more concessions to wring out your way, it's right away crossing the line into abuse.
Thank you.
The reality is that when it comes to abuse in general, there does seem to be a disproportionate preponderance of men over women, although interesting, when it comes to domestic violence, it depends on level of severity, and the reality is actually a little more complex than that. But I'm very happy to hear that answer, because I think it's extremely important, that we do have to be even-handed. I think that I've seen the plight sometimes of a man who is not able to move on because of a wife refusing to receive a get. And I think it's so important to hear that that we're being, that we're acting in the way that we're asking others to act. Meaning that we're open to perspectives on both sides and not blindly seeing this as purely a gender-related issue, because it's not. Although, again, obviously, in the vast majority of cases, we all know that it's almost always, it's just almost completely a woman's issue.
So this question is also directed for Rabbi Schachter. Rabbi Schachter mentioned when he spoke that you deal with cases in which a Beit Din has determined that a man is behaving inappropriately by refusing his wife to get. I was wondering if there are cases where his refusal would be considered legitimate for any reason, and how you would determine that.
It's a great question. I will repeat the question. The question that's asked is, are there situations where it's acceptable to withhold the get and to not issue it immediately? I think there are two ways that we have to think about this. One is, and this is what Rabbi Schachter has said in other situations, what Rabbi Schachter was referring to, from my understanding, are situations where at what point can we pressure outwardly the husband to give the get? That is separate from the husband's moral obligation to give the get once the marriage is deemed irreconcilable. And as Tamar mentioned, our approach is that once the marriage is irreconcilable, the get should be given as soon as possible. There may be situations where we won't pressure the husband to give the get, and there are halachic issues involved in when you're allowed to apply pressure, and that's only once a Beit Din deems the husband is halachically considered a get recalcitrant, that he's refused to give the get. So the issue is really one of timing, not an issue of is it acceptable to use the get as leverage. There's no question about that. It's not acceptable to use the get as leverage. But there may be an argument to be made that in some cases the get should be given at the end of the civil divorce, or once all issues are adjudicated in some sort of fair forum. And so I'll give an example. If a wife steals $1 million from the husband and runs away across the world, right? So the husband, she's acted completely inappropriately. So the husband is entitled to his fair day in court, and he may say that she has broken the law on countless occasions, and so therefore, and he'll turn to a Beit Din, and Beit Din may say you should perhaps have the get deposited in Beit Din, but the get will be issued once she starts to comply with the law, if she's been breaking the law. So that might be some sort of situation like that. But once there's been a fair hearing on the issues, whether in Beit Din or civil court, then there's, from my perspective, and this is what Rav Schachter has instructed us on many occasions, once there's been some sort of fair trial hearing settlement that's been offered, there's no excuse for the get not to be issued.
Thank you. Last question?
So what's the basis for the halachic objection or opposition to the prenup? Why would anyone say you can't sign it?
What's the basis for the halachic opposition to the prenup? As Rav Schachter mentioned, it's very few and far between. It's a minority opinion. By and large, the opposition that I've heard from Rabbanim to the prenup with one exception, with a Rav who has technical halachic objections to it. But by and large, the resistance by Rabbanim to using the prenup is a concern of you shouldn't talk about divorce at the time of marriage. And there was a certain Rosh Yeshiva from a yeshiva outside of this yeshiva who I spoke with because he's going to be Masar Kedushin at that wedding. And the groom said to me, I told him, you should sign a prenup. And he says, whatever my Masar Kedushin, my Rosh Yeshiva says. And so I called the Rosh Yeshiva, and I said, are you using a halachic prenuptual agreement? And he said, well, they shouldn't talk about divorce at the time of marriage. So I said, are you going to do a ksuba at the wedding? And he said, yes. And I said, well, the ksuba talks about divorce, and they're talking about divorce at the time of marriage, and the husband has to know the obligations that he's accepting upon himself by giving the wife the ksuba. So he said, well, you have to have lawyers drafted and this and that. And I said, well, it's already drafted, it's right here, ready to go. I'm a notary, I can notarize it for him, no problem. And he said, well, they shouldn't talk about divorce at the time of marriage. But wait. Well, and that was my conversation. I couldn't make that up. So that was the resistance. I think it's really just an issue of it being communally accepted and as a standard, and to break this stigma. As was mentioned before, there's a certain stigma to signing prenuptial agreements. We have to break that stigma and to say that this is a communal standard. Was that the last question? Because I want to ask a question for Tamar. And I didn't prep you for this. So the question that I want to ask to Tamar, and other people have asked me about it, so that's why I'd like to hear your perspective on it, is how do you maintain your emunah in all this? Meaning, how do you keep on fighting? Because I can't imagine the experience personally, and what keeps you going on.
Would have been nice if we had given It's actually an effort. It's a big effort, and it's something that I work on every day. And some days are harder than others. But to something that Dr. Pelcovitz spoke about, which really resonated with me, was the concept of when you're helping somebody else in need, when someone's struggling with something and they're doing it alone and without support, it can be almost unbearable. And I think that that's exactly when you end up with a situation. He made reference to Agunot, who many of whom are so depressed and so disillusioned that they almost can't go on day to day. And so I think the key for me has been my incredible support network. My family, first and foremost. My mother is here, and I'm just very fortunate for tremendous family love and support. Close friends, some of whom I see here, and I just can't believe it. And Rabbanim, when Rabbanim stand behind you and are willing to write a letter on your behalf and sign it with their name, they're making a very big statement, and they're doing something bold. And that show of support is tremendous. It validates. It's validating. Because the hardest thing, I think, for me going through this is not only dealing with the pain of and the ordeal of divorce itself and trying to parent well and trying to move on with my own life and figure that all out, but it's also being judged quite a bit. And it's like, not only am I suffering with this, but on top of it, now I'm like, there are a million accusations out there about my behavior, my past behavior, my current behavior, my future behavior, all sorts of assertions. And so that, in a way, was, I think, the most painful thing for me. And once I started to see the incredible support and solidarity from the Rabbanim, from the community, it made a world of difference. And I've certainly come to terms with the fact that I don't need everyone to agree with what I'm doing or to support me. There are going to be people who see things differently, but when you have this kind of showing, and when you have the kind of support that I've had, it means so much. It makes a world of difference, and there's no question that that's definitely helped me in this struggle. So thank you all.
We've had the privilege to hear from some truly inspiring people. And I thank you for coming to speak with us. Thank you for coming. I have to thank, of course, the TAC board for making this happen, a tireless statement. The point that's been stressed again and again is that this is a community issue. Egon is not a man's issue, it's not a woman's issue. It's a fact, it's something that we as a community have to face and have to stand united against. So whatever it is that you do, whether you encourage a friend to sign the prenup, you make sure that all your friends sign the prenup, you put them on your doors. Whether you come and you show up and you show support, and you show that you care, when you attend a rally, when you sign a petition, all of these things make a difference. You never know when, you never know who's the tipping point. Make sure that you care, make sure that you do what you can. And thank you for coming. The bus is back to Stern at 9. If you took a cab up here, give your receipt to someone from TAC. And there are a lot of materials from over at the back. Please take a look on our